Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. I am Jason, speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today I'm doing a live stream I haven't done in a while. Been kind of a crazy month, the month of March, and uh, coming to April. Well, I should say April's been a crazy month. Had a lot going on, so I haven't been doing as much live streams and stuff. And I'm kind of getting back into the normal routine of doing videos and having to do live streams. And I've been needing to do a live stream talking about movies I've watched recently that I have not reviewed on my channel. Um, I haven't done one in a while, so I have quite a bit of movies backed up in my list that I want to talk about on the channel. Um, yeah, and these are just movies that I've seen for the first time. A lot of them are movies that probably just came out in the last year. I still haven't seen a movie from this year yet. We're in April, and I still haven't caught any movies. So I still have a lot of movies to catch up this year. I still got movies I'm trying to catch up from last year, especially trying to catch up with everything that happened last year, um, and all that. So I got a lot of movies from last year that I'm catching up on, and then I got some older movies that I finally got around to watch for one reason or another. Anyways, to talk about here. So nothing new. These are all kind of at least a year old, probably movies, but I still love to get my thoughts on some of the stuff. Anyways, um, first, I guess I was talk about some Oscar movies because uh, I was trying to catch up with all these Oscar stuff. Um, hey, I think it's Nick, the New York sports guy. That's his new channel. I haven't watched a new movie since John Wick. Yeah. Oh, John Wick, the first one. That's a while. That's like 10 years ago. um, yeah, so you're definitely behind on it, but yeah, I'm trying to catch up with all the Oscar movies. Of course, Oscars just happened. What, a month or so ago, 2 months ago. I don't know when it was. Almost like 2 months. It feels like it seems like a long time ago. We had the Oscars. I always try to catch up with all the Oscar movies. I'm a big Oscar guy. I like to watch Oscar stuff and kind of be in tune with what's going on with the Oscars. And I was working on the Oscars, so I didn't watch it and didn't do. I did a reenactment, I think, a couple days later, and I talked about most of the movies nominated here, but I definitely caught up with pretty much all of the movies that I watched every movie that nominated for Best Picture, and I still got some movies I still need to watch that got nominated for Oscars, but I got most of them here. Hey, Lewis, nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Mike, thank you. Um, I'd be interested if you're in here, Mike. You can give me your opinions on some of these. I know you've seen a lot of these movies I'm going to talk about. Um, so first, catching up on some movies I don't think I've talked about. I know that I'm so outdated here, but uh, movie I haven't talked about on the channel is Maestro, which was nominated for Best Picture. Let's see, have you spoken about any movies? No, I haven't spoken about any movies yet. I'm just now starting to talk about the first movie, Mike. And I'm talking about Maestro. Maestro was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor for Bradley Cooper, Best uh, Actress or Supporting Actress for the other actress, the main actress in there. I'm forgetting her name at the moment. It was directed by Bradley Cooper. Um, Stars him. I don't know if he wrote it too. He's one of those guys that does about everything in movies. Nowadays, he directs, stars and writes the movies. It seems like, and so this was a big. It was a Netflix movie, so it's pretty easy to get onto, and it was definitely an Oscar bait movie. I think that's uh, the big negative about the movie that everybody talks about. But in my opinion, I think Bradley Cooper gave a really great performance. I think it was actually, I think he's a really great actor, one of our best actors working today, and he is. Early on, it's him, so he has like a bigger nose, I think, and then we have those are flashbacks, and then they have kind of more current scenes, I guess, if you want to say that, where he's an old man, and the old man makeup is really good. Reason why I got nominated for best makeup, and I thought I was going to win. It was surprisingly lost support things, but really good old man makeup on him, and he's definitely put on a different voice, and he kind of gets lost in the character. Like, he doesn't even look like Bradley Cooper. You're like, wow, like I forget that it's Bradley Cooper playing this part. So yeah, maybe it's overly done. Like, it definitely feels like he's going for the Oscar, and maybe that's why he didn't win it. I still think it was a great performance, but from Bradley Cooper, in my opinion, maybe the best thing about the movie is his performance. I mean, he does overdo it a bit, but again, he's portraying this famous composer, Bernstein, I believe his name is, and when he does his conducting, he does these very large, conducting things, and you're like, wow, it feels like he's overdoing it, but maybe that's the way the real conductor did it, so he's just doing it like him. Still, it feels like he's doing it to get an Oscar. That scene was so like crazy. He's just all over the place conducting, and you're like, holy cow! Like I've never seen anybody conduct like that before. Um, Besides that, it is a really boring movie. It is, again, it's been a while since I watched it, so I'm trying to remember much about it. I just remember it being super boring. It felt like it was over too long, probably. And the big problem to me is just like I do not care about this individual, like Bernstein, whatever. It just seems like a uh, very obscure. Not he's obscure. I know he's famous and he's like done a lot of good stuff in music. Maybe he's famous amongst music people, conductors and stuff, and aficionados. But to me, he's like, who cares about Leonard Bernstein? Like, who cares about this guy? And when you watch a movie, you're like, I come away going, yeah, nothing interesting happened in his life to me. He was a great composer. He had a really tough marriage because he was also gay, and so he had to hide that, and then he had a drug problem. But it's like nothing interesting, and nothing about his life was interesting. And so I'm like, why did we need a biopic of this guy? Basically, I want biopics of Freddie Mercury, stuff like that. People that are very interesting and have good music that I love listening to. I love those kind of biopics. But this, I'm like, it just seems like a weird biopic to me. And so I didn't really care about the character or any of his music or what was going on there. And the romance was not great, or the whole drama between him and his wife wasn't that interesting. Yeah, so I came away going, man, I'm just really bored, very uninterested. I think Bradley Cooper is a terrible director, and maybe I'm being harsh here, but he he does sometimes he has these very like he a couple times he's like on the phone and you only hear his side of the conversation, you don't hear the other side of the conversation on the phone, and he's on the phone going blah blah blah, and he's having this conversation, and it feels like the camera's right on him, like too close on him, and that happens like a couple times I feel like in the movie. And I remember going, man, why is he so close? Go back a little bit. And then there's a scene where he's talking to like his wife or whatever, and the camera's way back, where you can barely see the characters as they're interacting with each other and doing stuff. And I kept thinking, why are we so far back in this camera? Let's close in a little bit. Let's move the camera around, get some close-ups, get some wide shots, do something different. But I just kept on this wide shot, and I was like, I just don't think Bradley Cooper is a good director, because I hated Star is Born. I thought that was a terrible movie, and I thought this was a terrible movie too. Maestro, I mean, I understand, it's a biopic. Oscars love biopic. Academy loves biopics. Bradley Cooper is very popular with the Oscars. He's been getting a lot of Oscar nominations. I don't know. The Academy likes it, but I thought it was terrible. And almost everybody I've talked to thinks it's a terrible movie. But yeah, Maestro, it's like a 1-star movie at best, in my opinion. Let's see what Mike says. Caught Up in Time. I've not seen Maestro. You still haven't seen that one? Okay. But I've heard it's either terrible or great. You've heard it's great. Okay, I haven't heard that. I've just heard, amongst other people, that it's terribly boring. I remember Sin from Sin's Court, I think, talking about like she couldn't even make it through the movie. I think she quit after like 10 minutes of the movie. And I was like, yeah, I get it. It's not for a lot of people. It's not for them. It's not for me either. I made it through it, but I can understand, like, I want to quit the movie too. It was so bad. But see, apparently I've heard the scene where he goes crazy conducting. Yeah. He practiced that for 6 years to get the mannerism down for a 6-minute scene. That's crazy how much preparation they have to do for something like that. Yeah, it's incredible the way he does it. I mean, he's really acting his butt off in that scene, and it shows and everything. But yeah, it wasn't a movie for me, Maestro. Um, I'm very negative on these. I'm an Oscar guy, but I'm very negative on Oscar movies because I think the Academy nominates really bad movies for Best Picture and a lot of the stuff. So I'm going from another movie that I absolutely did not like, and that is Anatomy of a Fall, which is going to be surprising because all I hear is good things about this movie. I feel like anybody that talks about this movie that's like big on the Oscars or whatever, they talk about like a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people say this was the best movie nominated for Best Picture or something like that, or should have won Best Picture. And yes, I always hear good things about this movie, and so watching it, man, it was it's towards the bottom of my list. I really did not like this movie, and and it's just not a movie for me. Maybe I struggle with foreign films that aren't in English. I admit I struggle with it. I get bored when they're not speaking English a lot of times. Unless it's a kung fu, I can watch kung fu movies because I go, wow, they're not speaking English, but I can enjoy the kung fu part of it, you know. So I love that. But if it's not an action movie and I'm just a drama where people are talking to each other, man, I get bored so easily hearing people talk not English and having to read subtitles. And I just go, man, I'm so bored with these scenes. And that's just me. I know a lot of people are like, you know, if you're more of a film snob, you're like, what, you know, foreign films are so great and, you know, so artistic and you got to get past the subtitles, you know. And it's like, okay, I mean, maybe just some people can. I'm one of those people that I like English speaking movies because I'm an American who speaks English and that's just the way I am. Anyways, Natalie Fall does have some English speaking in it though, because what's her name, Hooler, who was nominated for Best Actress for the movies, the main character of the movie. She speaks there. I think it's a French movie or something like that. They're speaking in French a lot of times, but she also speaks some English too. I think she's a German actress too. So she's a German actress who speaks English and like French or something. Anyways, and it's the whole movie is uh, it's a murder mystery movie, I guess, a whodunit kind. Not whodunit because it's only one person that they think did it, and that's the wife, played by Hooler. I'm forgetting her first name. Uh, but her husband they find him on the ground from a two-story, fell out of the window, and he's dead. And the wife and the son are the only people in the house. So the question is, did he jump out the window, like commit suicide, or was he pushed out the window by his wife? Is the question. And so the whole movie is a trial movie. And I love trial movies, but this was not a good trial movie for me. And I think a lot of times because it's, you know, it's a different court system. It's not an American court system. I like courtroom dramas because I'm used to, you know, American courtrooms and like how we proceed, you know, and the rules. The rules are different in other countries. And so it's weird watching a court scene. And the court scenes, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it or something like that, and you're an American, the Hooler who's on trial, she's not necessarily on the stand, you know, being questioned by lawyers, but she's you know sitting with her lawyer, and the judge will ask her questions or the lawyer will ask her questions. And I'm like, why are they asking her questions? She's not on the stand, you know. And I'm guessing they don't have, you know, in America you have plead the fifth, you know, you can say you don't have to answer questions in America if you're on trial. You can, you know, make that decision like I'm not going to answer any questions. But I'm guessing in other countries you don't have that right. You know, you don't have the 10 you know, amendments in the Constitution to do that. So the judge and they're just asking, and then they'll ask other people, other witnesses, questions during the trial, and I'm like, why? How are they asking these people questions? And they're on in America, it's like you have to be on the stand to be asked questions and answer questions. And once you're out of the stand, you don't ask you anymore. So it's very weird watching as an American going, seems bonkers the way they're doing this trial. But and so yeah, it's just a trial movie of a guy, and it's just uninteresting. It's just the most uninteresting trial I've ever tried to sit through. I'm like, you know, when you think of good trial movies, it's like, oh, there's a real mystery of who killed this person and what was their motivation, all this, blah blah blah, and twists in the story and stuff like that. And this is like, okay, who cares? People get murdered every day. This seems like just a normal story of a guy dying and we're trying to figure out if he got murdered or not. Like this happens every day in New York City, probably. So it's like, who cares about the story about this guy that maybe fell out of the window, maybe got pushed out of the window? It's like this could, and it's just too long. And it's like, if they could cut this down to 45 minutes and put it on CSI, it could be an okay CSI episode, but not enough to make a full length movie out of. And again, I was just bored to tears throughout the movie. Nothing really interests me here. So it's like, uh, I mean, I'd give it probably half star. It's to me one of the worst movies I saw that got nominated for Best Picture, in my opinion. And a lot of people love the movie. People are like really into it. And again, maybe it's just me not being into foreign films or something. Um, let's see, Mike. You haven't seen Enemy Fall either, yeah. So okay, so far we aren't connecting yet, Mike, on these movies. I know I got one here. I know you've seen. So, but I'll be honest. At 2.5 hours, that alone put me off. Yes, 2.5 hour movie. It's just way too long for just a simple murder story. if the wife maybe murdered her husband or not. It doesn't need 2.5 hours for sure. And at the end, it's very anticlimactic. I felt like, and it kind of ends, and you're like, I'm not satisfied at all with the ending. I disagree that I feel certain movies get nominated for Oscars for a tick box exercise. Yeah, the Academy loves like the artsy movies, so these artsy movies get nominated, and it's like, wow, why not put a good movie that's entertaining that people like? I don't know how many people actually saw this movie, except for the people that are really into these kind of indie movies. I would say foreign indie movies. Foreign language movies don't bother me at all. There's some great ones like Parasite, which is fantastic. But yeah, I think I'll skip this one for now. Yeah, see, I don't like Parasite. I think Parasite's not a very good movie either. There's very few foreign films that I enjoy watching. Like I said, but anyways, so that's Anatomy of Fall, also nominated for Best Picture. All right, I'm going kind of from bad to worse here. Unfortunately, well, no, well, yeah, but I got, yeah. Actually, none of these are all really all that good, to be honest. I think I've already covered some of my favorite movies that were nominated for Best Picture, and I'll go through that here in a little bit too, as well. Next one I'm going to talk about is The Zone of Interest. It's another foreign film, got nominated for a bunch of Oscars, including Best Picture, and won, what did it win? Best Sound or something like that. It won some weird one that I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting to win. So it did very well overall, compared to, it's this movie that probably nobody knows about unless you're into the Oscars like me. But the regular person never probably heard this movie. Zone of Interest is this German language film. And it's all about this guy who's working at a concentration camp, basically, a German soldier. And we kind of, but it's mostly just about his family just doing mundane life things, like, and I'll tell you right now, it's one of the most boring movies I've ever watched in my life. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's one of those movies that it's the worst movie I saw last year. I'll say that right now. I had my top 10 worst movies, and number 10 was, or I mean, number one, what now I'm forgetting the name of the movie, but it was the Barry Keoghan movie about the house. That one was really bad, and it was infuriating. This isn't so infuriating. It's just boring as heck. It feels like nothing happens in this movie, and I hate that. I like things to happen in movies. I love a plot. I love character development. I love action scenes. I love uh, things. Conflicts that you have to overcome. Uh, I love. You have to have underdog story. I don't know. You have to have stuff to make this story interesting, and nothing in this story was interesting. And most of it's just, oh, here's this German family, and they're out in the garden doing garden stuff. Like, oh wow, look, they're doing garden stuff. That's great. They're doing chores. It's a chore. It's a movie of people doing chores. Like, you love watching people do chores. That's your idea of a good movie. I don't get it. It's like Roma. I hated Roma, this Mexican movie where it's about a housekeeper doing house chores, and that's almost the whole movie is her just doing house chores, and you're like, I do house chores all the time. Who cares about this Mexican lady doing house chores? Anyways, same thing about this. Watching a German family just doing house chores, it's like, okay, who cares? Every once in a while you talk about, oh yeah, there's a concentration camp. Isn't that terrible? This family is doing their mundane chores while people are dying. That's terrible. Yeah, I mean, okay, but it doesn't make for an interesting movie. And I think it's based off of a book, so maybe the book is more interesting than this one. I don't know. It's just so uninteresting. And again, it's a foreign language film, so the whole thing is in German, and you have to read subtitles. Again, I was just bored out of my mind watching these people speak German, and just like, oh my god, like, when's this movie going to end? So I do not get this movie at all. And again, it gets a lot of good views. People seem to like this movie. To me, this is this is my worst kind of movie. These kind of movies are my least favorite type of movies. The boring foreign language film that I only watch because it got nominated for Best Picture, so I watch it. Let's see. I bet you'd watch Parasite over Maestro and Anatomy of Fall. I will agree there. Parasite's better than Maestro and Anatomy of Fall, because there's some interesting things that happen in that movie that keep it. It's not necessarily a boring movie. It's just I just don't care for it. Here's my sister Abby. Hi, Abby. I've been watching Shogun. I've heard of Shogun. I heard some people say good things about Shogun on Hulu. And here's what bothers me. There are 3 languages being spoken. Japanese, Japanese or people are speaking Japanese with subtitles. Portuguese is spoken in English. Okay. I haven't heard much about that part of it. I don't really know much about it, but I've heard people talk about Shogun. um, the zone of interest I feel could work for students who are learning about history and don't want anything super graphic to be shown. Yeah, there's nothing graphic being shown. However, not one I care to watch again. So you have seen Zone of Interest. Okay. Yeah, it was hey, playing down under. Nice to see you here. Just a minute, Jason, you wanted gardening tips from Zone of Interest. Yeah, that's why I watch movies to get gardening tips. That's all I want. Games can be like that too. Interesting. I see you have a PlayStation logo, so you might be like play video games, which is cool. I like to do. I have PlayStation 4. I need to play something. I haven't had a good game in a while. But yeah, all right. So we're getting to the worst stuff. I'll get some slightly maybe better stuff. Um, Another movie nominated for Best Picture that I caught up on, and these are movies I watched months ago, so I'm just really late on catching up on these movies. Is American Fiction, another movie nominated for Best Picture. Jeffrey Wright nominated for Best Actor. Sterling K. Brown nominated for Best Supporting Actor. So I got a lot. It won Best Original Screenplay, I believe it was, or something like that, or adapted screenplay. I can't remember. It won a screenplay, if I remember right. Was the big win for that movie. And there's another one that gets really good reviews. Seems like, and it's better than it's much better than the three movies I just mentioned. I'll be honest, but still, it was just it's a weird movie in a sense, and I don't quite get what's going on in the movie. And the end is so kind of confusing that I'm like, what just happened? I don't know. I don't quite understand what happened in the movie. And the movie is just this guy who he's a book writer. He's black and he writes books, but he doesn't write about the black experience. He doesn't write from which was the black experience. I guess what they mean by black experience is a black person who grows up, in a broken family and deals with gangs and drugs and and baby mamas and all this stuff. Poor black people, and that's the black experience. And he doesn't write about that because he's actually like a very educated, very good writer, very sophisticated guy, and does very well. He has a fair amount of money, and so he can't really write about the black experience. But that's what people want is when they read a book about a black person, they want it that gritty black experience that he doesn't provide, and so his book sales aren't doing that great. And so, but then there's this other author who's black who's writing about the black experience, and she's doing really great, and everybody's praising her books. And so it's kind of this interesting contrast between the two. But it's really not about that. It's really about his family drama, which really disappointed me about the movie because I thought, okay, this is kind of an interesting premise. I'm interested, and they even go into this, thing where well, the whole thing is he then writes a book. He kind of, not seriously writing the book, but kind of just kind of making fun of the genre. He writes a book from the black experience, and the book does really well. So he didn't mean it to do well. He almost wrote it as a joke, and then it does well. And so it's kind of this funny irony. So then now he needs to try to sell this book, even though it's like against his, personal beliefs or against his, what he stands for or whatever. And then he has to act like, a gangster black person, which is kind of funny because Jeffrey Wright in the movie doesn't really look like a gangster black person. So that part of it's kind of funny. That's an interesting part of the movie. But that's only a small part of the movie. Most of the movie is this family drama with his mom and his siblings, mostly his brother, played by Sterling K. Brown, who's a drug addicted gay person who got divorced from his wife, and I don't know what to say. I don't know if I want to say slacker because he's like a doctor, so he's like obviously very successful in some ways, but not a serious character. It seems like he's not very serious. While Jeffrey Wright's his character's overly serious all the time, and he's really not the most likable. He's a bit of a jerk, not likable. There's not really a lot of likable characters, to be honest, in the movie, which I didn't like. But it's all about his mom has dementia, and so they're dealing with what we're gonna do with mom. She has dementia, and we have to put her in her home, and she's not liking it there, and there's all these problems. And so to me, it's just this very uninteresting family drama. I'm like, okay, I don't really care. And then he meets this girl that lives close to his mom, this woman who's getting a divorce, and then they start having a relationship out of nowhere. Like they sleep together right away, and it's like that was quick. Like like I don't know what was going on and why this happened so quickly. I never meet someone and then sleep with them right away and like have a relationship. That never happened in my life. Never will happen in my life. And it always happens in movies, and it always kind of bothers me. I'm like, that's not how real life works. You don't just meet someone and sleep with them. At least in my experience. Anyways, so yeah, so there's a relationship, and then that goes sour, and anyways, so it follows this whole story, and then at the very end, not to spoil too much, but at the very end, it's very unclear if any of the events happened in the movie. I guess I'll just say that. You get to the end, and then you're like, I think it's possible that everything I saw didn't really happen, and it was just all in his mind. I guess I'll just say it like that. You think it's just him making up a story in his mind, and that was the movie that you watched. So it felt like you got bamboozled by the end. That was my feeling. I don't know, Mike, if you're watching this, you tell me if I'm off on that, if I'm close to saying that I felt like you were bamboozled at the end, and it kind of ends, and then you're like, I'm left to go. That's why I really did not like this movie because, again, it was very interesting. You had this whole relationship thing that really goes nowhere, and it's like, what was the point of the relationship? What's the point of the whole mom thing? And at the end, you're like, I don't think any of it mattered. So why did I even watch this movie? So I feel like, especially the ending, really like because there's some comedic. It's considered a comedy. There's some comedic moments. There's some interesting moments. There's some interesting ideas. But then overall, at the end, I felt like, oh, like this was pointless. I felt like it was a very pointless movie. So again, I'd give it like a 1 star. I would not give it a Best Picture nominee. I do like Jeffrey Wright though. Jeffrey Wright's a very good actor, and Shirley King Brown's a very good actor. So I will agree on that. Um, Let me catch up on some American Fiction. I can't agree on. I really like the movie. Yeah, you like the movie a lot more than I did. I thought it was hilarious. However, the ending wasn't great. Okay, so you even said it right there. You kind of agree with me. I really did not like the ending. It did not land. Um, AJ, how you doing, AJ? Uh, Nice to see you, all the way from England. That does annoy me when movies are way off reality. Yeah, that's definitely this movie. All right. All right, Mike, I'm going to cover a movie that you, I think, really liked. I did not like nearly as much, but I think there's some things I liked about it. That is Poor Things. Poor Things, another big Oscar movie, maybe the second biggest after after Oppenheimer. It got quite a bit of Oscars. I think maybe 4 or something like that. I got Best Actor for Emma Stone, which I thought it was a good chance, but I was kind of going for Lily Gladstone personally for Killers of the Flower Moon. But Emma Stone's great, so I can't fault her for that. It just feels like she's very young and she's already got 2 Oscars. It's like, wow. And she's not real young. She's like in her mid-30s, but still, it's like, wow. And she's one of my favorite actresses. So like, I don't have a problem giving her an Oscar, but I do kind of like to share the wealth a little bit. But anyways, she's really great in it. Movie got nominated for it got nominated for quite a bit of Oscars if I remember right. But it won a bunch of technically, it did very well. I think it won costumes and makeup. It seems like it maybe won one more. I can't remember now on top of my mind, but it won at least 3, maybe 4 Oscars. So it did very, very well. Anyways, and I know Mike's already talking about it here in the chat before I even get into it. Talking about American Fiction. Yeah, I think the ending stopping it from being a higher rating because it leaves. Yeah, it's a very ambiguous ending. Like you don't know what happened. Yes, Emma Stone's on fire. That woman can't do no wrong. Yes, she is good. And I don't know if you don't like Oppenheimer. Is that what that is? Playing Down Under. Yeah, Poor Things was great, but not everyone's cup of tea, and I think it's for a particular audience. Yes, that's what I'm gonna say. Poor Things, and I knew this coming in, and it is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, and I think that's the director Lagamos. He does really weird movies. I've seen one of his other movies, and I did not like that one either. about the Queen or whatever, and had Emma Stone in it. Um, I know he did like The Lobster, which I haven't. I plan on watching that at some point, but it's a weird concept too, The Lobster. And so this guy does really weird. He has a really weird concept, I guess, ideas, anyways. But this is the weirdest plot I've ever seen in a movie about Emma Stone plays a girl who I don't know if I can even say what it is, but uh, she's a woman who tries to kill herself, but I guess doesn't quite kill herself or almost kills herself or has brain damage. And this mad scientist played by William Dafoe, and she's pregnant. She's pregnant, and so William Dafoe takes the baby that she's pregnant with, takes the brain from the baby and puts it in the head of Emma Stone's. Emma Stone has the brain of her own baby. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. That's a sentence. That's a real sentence that you're like, I never even thought that was possible. Plot. Yeah, that's the plot of the movie. It is the weirdest idea, and it's almost obscene and kind of gross and a lot of other things. But so we start with the movie with she has a baby brain, and so but it's weird because she's a of course she's a grown woman. She has like a baby brain, which is fine. Like I don't mind the idea of like, oh, she's I mean the idea behind her like having childlike ideas or a childlike sense of the way she acts is childlike, and as the film goes she gets smarter and gets more mature. Like that's an interesting idea. I think that's probably the best part of the movie is that idea of her growing and maturing, um, at the beginning though it's all in like black and white. It's weird. It's like it's a lot of black and white, and she's a kid but it's weird that she's always punching people. I'm like, do kids do that? Maybe they do, and I don't think about it. But she's constantly like, she's a jerk. It's like she's a real jerk as a kid. I suppose kids are real jerks. I guess you don't think about it because they're little kids, and you can, brush them off because they're little. But, anyways, but she does very bad things, and there's a problem with there's no morality in the movie. I think it's a big problem for me to go, man, you're like you had this girl with a baby brain, and you're not going to teach her morality, what's morally right or wrong. Feels like she's always doing morally wrong things, and no one says no, you shouldn't do that. They just let her do it, and so she learns to be morally wrong. And it's like, man, this is terrible parenting. If you want, it almost feels like Willem Dafoe's character is mad scientist guy is like the dad, and it's like you're a terrible dad. You're letting your kid do terrible things, and you're not, trying to correct it. And so it's very weird. Anyways, so she runs off with Mark Ruffalo's character, who's just kind of which doesn't make any sense to me. Why she would leave, Willem Dafoe, who's like her dad, and her dad doesn't want her to, or Willem Dafoe doesn't want her to, but she's like, oh, I can make my own decisions. But I'm like, no, you can't. You're like a little kid. So it's weird that she runs off with him out of nowhere for no reason, I guess, except that she's curious, I guess. I don't know. But Mark Ruffalo is really a terrible person in the movie. And it's kind of he's a doctor, but I don't know, he's creepy. He's a real creep, I guess. Okay, he takes her just to have sex with her, basically, because Emma Stone, she's good looking. So, except for the eyebrows, the eyebrows are very thick, and it kind of threw me off a little bit. Like this movie is definitely not Emma Stone at her prettiest or at her most attractive, I would say. In fact, there's scenes where I'm like, gosh, this almost ruins me from Emma Stone a little bit. Where I'm like, Emma Stone was really like, because the thing you're going to know about this movie, if you know anything, is that there's lots of nudity, there's lots of sex scenes, gratuitous graphic sex scenes and nudity, overly done. Like it goes way too much, and it's not too far into where I'm like, man, I'm getting tired of all these scenes. And I like Emma Stone. She's pretty. I like pretty girls. I have no problem with that. But it's just not sexy. She's not sexy. The sex scenes aren't sexy. They're just kind of gross to me. And after a while, I'm like, wow, this is just gross and just obscene and just disturbing. I don't know what's any adjective I can think of I throw in this movie. It's just very not fun. The sex scenes and stuff like that, which you think, oh, sex scenes, that's great, good looking girl, but to me it was like I was not having fun with any of these sex scenes and all the stuff that she was doing. And yeah, Emma Stone gets naked in it, and you're like, oh wow. I know Mike, he really praises the movie because you got Emma Stone, she's naked. How can you not like that? And yeah, Emma Stone's great. She looks great. But at the same time, I was just like it was a little overdone, I guess. And after a while, I'm just like, gosh, I'm not really into it. I'm not getting into this, all these sex scenes and stuff like that. And I am talking too much about that. I'm sorry. I apologize. That's just my overall thought on all of that. And it's kind of a gross, ugly movie at times, to be honest. And it's a comedy. There are some comedic moments. M. Stone is funny, and she did win the Oscar, I think, because she really goes all out there in the movie and does some really strange things. Because she has a kid brain. Like I said, the comedic moments is that she doesn't understand morality, what's morally right or good. So she does a lot of morally bad things. Like there's a baby crying, and she's like, "I'm gonna go punch that baby," and uh, and it's like, oh, that's funny because you don't want to punch a baby. That's morally wrong. And it's funny because she doesn't understand what's morally right. That punching babies isn't a good thing. And that's the comedy in it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's a little overdone. But anyways, there's some stuff like that, and uh, yeah. So and there's some strange things. But I mean, it's just a weird movie. There's a whole sequence where she's a prostitute and she's having sex with different guys, and like I didn't care for any of that, to be honest. And then at the very end, we get kind of in the third act of the movie, and all of a sudden her husband shows up, who she's her previous life basically before she had her baby brain. She was married and she was committing suicide because she was didn't like her marriage or something like that. And so then towards the end, it's like it feels like the movie should be over, and all of a sudden the husband shows up, and you're like, okay, this guy shows up for the first time in the movie, and it's like, okay, this movie should be wrapping up, but now we got this whole new plot point coming in, and it was weird. And all of a sudden she had to go, and the movie kind of plays guys as being really terrible. I mean, there's one guy who's kind of nice, but it feels like, and Willem Dafoe, I guess maybe, but it feels like it makes guys look bad mostly. Like we're all just horrible human beings, and so it's a little negative towards men, I would say. And so her husband's a very terrible uh, abuser and all this, and you're like, gosh, I didn't need that at all in the movie. Um, but I will say I like the ending of the movie. Overall, I thought it was actually a good ending, where I think she does marry the guy that's actually good to her, and she does get not revenge, but kind of gets her husband who's abusive kind of gets revenge against him at the end, and Mark Ruffalo's character who's terrible is not in a good place either at the end, so that's good, I guess. And she's kind of happy, at the end she's kind of in a good place. So in a sense, I'm like, okay, this was a satisfactory ending to the movie. Overall, I'd give it 2 stars. So it's not as bad as the other ones. I'm not giving it a 1 star or a half star. Um, but it's not a movie I'd go back to be honest. I don't know about you, Mike. I know you really like this movie, and I haven't read. Ryan Swells. I really appreciate you being in the comment section. I haven't looked at your stuff yet, what you've written. So I don't know if you're a big fan of this too, Ryan Swells, and it has a lot of fans to it. I would say obviously it's just too weird. I'm not into this really weird movies like this. But there are some good things about it that are, like I said, Emma Stone is really good in it, and I was never bored. I'll say this: Maestro, Anatomy of Fall, Zone of Interest, so boring. Poor Things wasn't boring. I was actually paying attention the whole time, and so I give a lot of credit for that. But it's definitely not my kind of movie, if you know me. um, Now I got a lot of comments on this, so I'm interested in what people are saying here. Um, let's go with Mike here. I think technically the movie is really good compared to the other nominations. I mean, Oppenheimer was good, but everyone marvels over that one scene. However, in the grand picture, it wasn't great. Interesting. Okay. Oppenheimer was good, but overrated. I would agree with that. It was a bit overrated. I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made. I don't think it was best picture. It's not my best. It was one of my favorite movie by far of the year. It was fine. I liked it okay. But yeah, it was a bit overrated. Emma Stone and Poor Things director are together again for some new movie trailer. Oh, really? Yeah, Emma Stone must work really good with Lagamos. Um, well, let me say, Play Nine says, well said. And he says, "Thanks. Oppenheimer's highly overrated." So you agree too? People like that over Inception and Batman trilogy. I'm like, seriously? I agree. I mean, Inception and Batman is like definitely his best material. I'm glad that Christopher Nolan won because I think he should have won for Inception. So, or The Dark Knight, should have been nominated or whatever. Um, so I think he deserves an Oscar. Maybe not for and this movie was fine. It was good enough that I was fine with him winning. Um, and Play Down agrees with that. He is the Hulk. What do you expect? Oh, Mark Ruffalo. Yeah. Um, so you've seen it, Abby. Okay. Yeah, I like the ending, poor things, but I don't know if you agree with me, Abby. It was a really weird movie. Um, leave those thick eyebrows alone. do you like the thick eyebrows, Mike? All right, good. Let's see what Ryan says here. I definitely agree, Jason. I loved when she was learning new things. Yeah, I thought Emma was amazing at it with the direct dialect as a baby, essentially. But the sex scenes did start to get a bit uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a good word. It was a bit uncomfortable. I was watching it by myself, of course. I would not watch that movie with anybody. That would be too uncomfortable to watch with anybody in the room, in my opinion. Ooh, Rain get naked. I'm not sure what that means. I will admit there were scenes they did overdo the sex scenes a little. Okay, so you agree with me on that. Or having topless scene, yeah, a lot of topless scenes when it wasn't needed. Yeah. However, no complaints on a personal level. That's all I'm saying. I know, Mike. How could you? I know. Here I'm complaining, and I'm like, I shouldn't be complaining about Emma Stone, being naked. I shouldn't. I shouldn't. I'm getting sick of woke hating men movies. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I say it's a. I don't know if I thought about how much woke that movie was, but I did feel like it was very negative towards men. Maybe that's just me feeling that way. A lot of bad men in that movie. Late to this live stream, hey Nick. Oppenheimer wasn't overrated for me. It was teased for ages and it worked. I liked it. Yeah, a lot of people it was their favorite movie of the year. And it was one of the better movies that got nominated. I would say that's one of the better movies that got nominated for Best Picture for sure. There's a lot of terrible stuff they got. Rangy equals redhead. Okay. I got you there. All right, I think those are the Best Picture nominees that I've gone through. I got a couple more Best Picture kind of style movies that I watched as well because I'm trying to catch up on other movies that I thought could have got nominated for Best Picture but didn't. One was another biopic, and that is Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Ridley Scott movie. And Napoleon was one I was kind of interested in, and the trailer I thought looked really good, and I thought Ridley Scott, he's kind of a hit or miss director for me because he can do something like Gladiator, which I think is great. The Martian, I think it's called, is great, but then he does movies that I think are really boring as well. So, but he has his movies look good. There's a good look to a lot of his movies. I will say. It's funny. My sister. Have you have you seen a movie you liked at all recently? I don't think I have really, to be honest. I think pretty much most of the movies I have one movie I like quite a bit that I have on my list here, but most movies I'm not a fan of. It feels like there's very few good movies out there. But yeah, Napoleon. I love the subject matter. Napoleon is a very interesting character. I mean, I think he's the greatest general probably that's ever lived. I mean, if you see most lists, Napoleon's usually like, if not number one, pretty close to the top of the one of the greatest generals. So obviously everybody knows Napoleon. I don't know exactly his history, exactly what he's done. I just know he's this great general that's won a lot of battles, and he's of course supposed to be short and all this. But the battle scenes are really cool looking. And so I thought, oh, this might be interesting to watch on just a technical level. It looks kind of cool. And it got nominated for some Oscars for like, I think it got like a special effects maybe nomination and maybe a costume nomination. So it did get some Oscar nomination, but missed out on Best Picture, which I thought might get there, And you go Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix is one of my favorite actors working today. So I felt like, oh man, how can you, that interests me enough just to go, okay, it's interesting subject matter. And you got one of my favorite actors, Joaquin Phoenix. So So I was kind of looking forward to this, and I finally caught on to it. And it got a lot of negative views though, so I kind of going into it thought this might not be very good. Um, but I was willing to give it a shot. And I'll admit, overall, was not a great movie, and most of it's because it was too long. It's a little boring at parts. And the good part is the battle scenes are really good. There's some good stuff there, but I feel like the movie's just kind of hurry. It just feel like you got put in. It's before he really got into power, but he got into. You kind of see him at the beginning, getting rising the ranks of being a great general, I guess, and then eventually being emperor. And that's a cool scene where he has like cool, and the costumes are really good. I really do love the costumes in this movie. Like that emperor costume he has on when he gets the crown, puts it on his head, is really cool. Um, but then the movie kind of just seems like it rushes through his life, and I feel like at any given time, I'm like, I'm not sure we were. I didn't have a good sense of like where we were in the timeline of his life. Like, where are we compared to the last scene or the next scene? Like, I don't know how to say it, but it feels like the scenes didn't really flow together very well, and I didn't feel like I really understood the history or felt like what was going on in the movie. Just that, okay, now he's talking to this guy, now he's at this battle, and all this stuff. And the worst part of the movie to me is just the romance relationship between him and his wife. And it's not a very good marriage. It's a terrible marriage, to be honest. She's like cheating on him all the time, and he's like, so it's not really a good love story at all. And I suppose it's based on maybe true things that happen in real life. I don't know much about his love life with his wife. Um, but he wants to have a son to take over because he's emperor. So he's trying to get a son out of her, and I think they're having some trouble. So he's really a jerk to her, and she's a jerk to him. So I'm like, I don't like any of these characters, or they're like, I'm not into this relationship at all. And it felt like the movie concentrated too much on the relationship, And I was like, I'm more interested in the battles and like the history of what Napoleon was doing and the conflicts and all that and the politics. I was interested more in the political part of it, but not the relationship so much. And I don't think it was done really that well. I mean, maybe it's based on true stuff. I guess it's just not a good love story in real life. I think at the end though, he still like loved her and like all this stuff and thought about her. But anyways, but yeah, he kind of go through his life a little bit. And again, I would love to hear more. Maybe I need to watch a biography on him or something to get more of what's going on because he has different battles. Like he's in Egypt, he's in all these different countries, and then at one point he gets kicked off. France kicks him out, and he's like, what do you call him? He's on an island, living out the rest of his life. But then he comes back and tries to take over France again. So that's kind of an interesting story point. But then I think he loses at Waterloo and all this, and so you get a little bit of that towards the end. I don't think his story really ends happily. I mean, I think he dies and you know gets kicked out as emperor, and he eventually dies alone. But and one negatives I think about Joaquin Phoenix is so good, yet this is not a great performance by him. I was like very uh, underwhelmed by his performance because he's so good and he's played so many different characters and he has a great intensity about him and his acting and the kind of roles he does, and he's really good at playing crazy characters and really putting us all into it. And I felt like this was a very low key performance. Like it wasn't like a really good scene where he is mad and he's going crazy, and he's yelling at somebody, he's putting a lot of emotion. It felt like a very emotionless performance. And maybe that, again, maybe Napoleon was that way, but it doesn't make for an interesting character. I guess overall, I wasn't interested in Napoleon as a character, and I was just disappointed that Joaquin Phoenix. I feel like we should have gotten more out of Joaquin Phoenix in the performance. So to me, that was a little disappointing. But I will say the battle scene. There's one battle scene where you've seen in the trailer, probably if you haven't seen the movie, or if you've seen the movie, where they're fighting. These people are they're on ice. I guess they don't know it, and then they find out they're like on ice, and they shoot cannons, and the cannons hit the ice, and people fall through the ice. That scene was really cool. That was to me by far like the best scene in the movie. Watching all these people, watching the cannonballs hit the ice, and people are falling through the ice, and you see them drowning. They're falling, and they can't. That was, I mean, man, what a nightmare. But It was a really cool visual scene, I would say. But yeah, overall, Napoleon, I'd give it like 2 stars. It was not particularly that interesting. Let's see. Nick. Poor things. Emma learning language was wildly inaccurate. Oh, I teach language, or used to. Her language acquisition was not realistic. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem very accurate. Have you seen a movie you like? Oh, yeah, that's right. I read that one. Let's see. Nick says, I like Civil War, top 5 2024 so far. I haven't seen that movie yet. Um, I can't say I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot of good things about Civil War. It seems like just a weird idea, a country going to a civil war again. Like I don't like that idea, because there's so much problems going on right now. So much, you know, not diverse, but I can't think of the word. People are not getting along in America. What is that picture behind you? The piano one. I love it. That is John Lennon playing the piano. It came out of the Imagine uh, um, a record, vinyl. I have Imagine on vinyl, John Lennon's album, and it comes with this poster is in there that you can fold up. Anyways, yeah, so I put it there. Yeah, I love that picture. It's really cool. The white background, John playing on the piano. Let's see, and Napoleon was probably one of the Western world's most influential leaders, like elite 0.1% level kind of guy. Yeah, he was made to look a little silly for me. Yeah, I agree with that. I think they could have done. I don't know. I just feel like they could have done more with that character, with that movie. With story wise, it seemed a little messy or something. Yes, I said Waterloo in the ABBA. Waterloo, bum, bum, bum. Very good song. Yeah, so word doesn't interest me based on the trailer. It doesn't interest me too much either, to be honest. But um, all right, let's go to another movie I saw, which is on Max now. In fact, you can watch it on Max, and that is The Color Purple, which is a musical adaptation of a, I guess, a musical adaptation of a Spielberg movie that's off of a book. It's first it was a book, then Spielberg made a movie out of it in the '80s, and then they made a musical on Broadway that was very successful, and then now they made this movie musical with Fantasia Barrino as the main character. Is it Dana Brooks? I think his name is. Who plays kind of uh, one of the main characters who was played by Oprah in the earlier movie. Um, anyways, yeah. So this is a musical adaptation of it based on the Broadway musical. And I love musicals, so I was actually really excited for this one. And it didn't really. I think it only got like one nomination. That was for Dana Brooks. I think now I'm thinking about it, that's probably not her name. I think it's something like that. Now I'm forgetting the name of the actress, but uh, she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and I think she should have won. She was really good. She definitely stole like every scene and was like the best character and had the most emotional scenes as well. This is a movie that I'm like, there's a lot of good here, but it is a rough movie. I guess I'll just say this: it's a rough movie, and I've seen the Spielberg Color Purple. And there's a lot of good stuff about it. The acting's really good, um, and this even the ending is really good. But it is a rough movie, and I have such a struggle with this kind of movie where it looks really good, but I just can't get over the fact that there's so much abuse towards women and also towards black people as well. It's also dealing with racism. But even the worst part to me is just the wife beating. I just cannot stand wife beating. Is I know it's to make a point that you like this guy's a horrible person. He's a wife beater. And it's like, okay, but I don't need to watch it. I just don't like watching women get beat up. It's just something I hate seeing and disturbs me so badly that I just can't watch movies like that. And so this movie was really rough for me because there's a lot of wife beating. Um, the main character Fantasia gets forced into marrying this horrible, horrible human being. Um, Now I'm thinking name of the actor. He's in another movie I'm gonna talk about. I think his name is Domingo. Now I'm forgetting his name, but something Domingo, who's a really good actor. He does a really good job, and he plays the character that Danny Glover played back in the '80s. Um, Anyways, and he abuses her. I mean, beats her all through the movie. Just beats her up. hits her, treats her like crap. And you have to put up with that for a lot of the movie. And I just absolutely hated seeing that. And so, I mean, that's my big negative is that. And then there's this one scene, of course, they break down the one character. I said, I think her name's like Cece or something. I can't remember now. Uh, I didn't, I didn't research anything before I did this live stream. Um, but that character that played was, I can only say she was played by Oprah Winfrey back in the day. She's a very sassy, kind of very charismatic character. And then some racism happens and she gets beat up by white people and gets put in jail because, she, hit a white woman and she's just broken down. And it's very emotional how she gets broken down and she's a different character. And then towards the end, she kind of gets back to that sassy character that you like. But that whole performance is just amazing. I love the whole character development there was great. But still, it's rough to see her get beat up and see her get broken down. So yes, all of that. In the end, I can't recommend the movie because I just can't watch that again. I do not want to watch a movie again where women are getting abused. Other than that, there's a lot of good stuff to say about the movie. The musical numbers are really good. The dancing is fantastic. It's one of those movies I love a good musical with some good dance numbers. This movie has a lot of good dance numbers. It feels like all the extras that are doing the dancing throughout the movie, fantastic. The choreography, whoever did the choreography, fantastic. Like I do love the musical numbers and the dancing numbers are so good. Um, like I said, some of the acting is really good. Fantasia is fine. Like I think not as good as Whoopi Goldberg, and who I would never think I'd say this. Whoopi Goldberg was so good in the original. Like she gave one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in the original Color Purple, which is weird because she's known for comedic roles, but dramatically she was great. Anyway, then she's won an Oscar, of course, for Ghost, playing a somewhat comedic character. Um, but Fantasia does fine. I don't know if she's great, but she's fine in it. And a lot of performances are pretty good overall. I would say, and the ending is actually one of the best endings I've ever seen in a movie. Because the movie is kind of this movie where it's like it beats you over the head of all this terrible stuff. Like, oh, here's a horrible thing. Here's a horrible thing. Here's a horrible thing, and you get beaten down through the whole movie. And then finally at the end, good things happen, and you're like relieved. You're like, oh, good thing. A good thing happened. I don't have to watch bad things happening. And finally at the end, you're like, and the ending is so good. It's emotional, and yeah, I don't want to give up too much if you haven't seen it, but she gets reunited with different characters throughout the movie, and she's in a good place. Like people are nice to her. She got out of her abusive marriage. She has a successful business. She has family around her, and it ends with her she's outside having supper with all these characters, and they sing a song, and it ends, and you're like overwhelmed with like, oh my god, that was a great ending. I'm so overjoyed that this character has a happy ending because she gets abused throughout the whole movie. But to me, it's like I could have done with less abuse. But I mean, that's the point of the movie, I guess, is to say here are all these terrible things happening, and then something good happens at the end. And but to me, it was like too much bad stuff happened for me to be too overjoyed by the end. I'm like, oh, I'm glad she has a happy ending, but I still could have done without all the bad stuff that happened to that character throughout the movie. So my feeling is that it's a really well done movie, good musical, but just a rough watch. So I'd give it 2.5 stars. Like barely not recommend. Let's see, Nick. I think the source material of Color Purple was much more vivid. Musical was a much more gentle version. Not read the book. The first movie left a lasting impression. This one less so. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, like I said, the same thing happens in the Spielberg Color Purple. The acting is so good in that one. That's what I like. And the ending is really good, where you're very happy at the ending. It's hard because of all the abusive stuff that happened throughout the movie. Yeah, a lot to like in the musical for sure. I agree. So Color Purple, better than a lot of the movies I've talked about so far. Still not a movie I can say was great necessarily. All right, about an hour in, we're getting there. I've talked briefly about a movie I saw, which is a weird movie that you probably haven't heard of, and it's called El Conde, which it's Spanish, I think. Now I'm trying to think of what it means. It means like the something. I forget now. Now I'm forgetting what El Conde. Someone maybe if they know they can tell me. But it's a movie you might not have heard of. It's a very small budgeted, probably foreign film. Again, it's a foreign film. And why did I watch this? It got nominated for best cinematography. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll see what this movie's about. And it's a weird movie, kind of. It's a vampire movie. Um, yes, I think it's Spanish, if I remember right. And it follows this guy who is a vampire, and he's I can't. It's hard to follow the plot because again, I have a hard time following these foreign films because it's weird because they speak in like Spanish, but the narration's in English, so it's weird. So at least when they, and it sounded like Helen Mirren, some like English lady doing the narration. So at least when they narrate it, I can understand what's going on, kind of. But when they're speaking, of course, I had to read subtitles, and sometimes I lose interest and I don't pay attention to what's going on. But it follows this guy, and he's like in the government, I think, uh, and he can't die because he's a vampire, so he's immortal. And he goes out and he flies out and he kills people, and so it's actually pretty gruesome when he kills people. Uh, it's pretty. So I didn't like that aspect. Of course, I'm not a big fan of horror, so to me, I didn't like any of the vampire stuff where he has to kill people to sustain life, you know. But follows him, and then he's like in the government, but then he's not in the government. He's like on a farm, and he has family, and the family like are waiting for him to die so they can get his inheritance, but he can't die because he's a vampire. So it's that kind of thing in it. And he bites some people and they become vampires. He bites like this little girl, I think, or somebody does, and she becomes a vampire at one point. Anyway, so it just follows the story, and then eventually he does get killed, I believe, at the end. Here I'm spoiling the movie, but if I remember right, and that's here, I can't remember exactly what happened because I just, if you can't tell, I was not interested in this movie at all. And yeah, it was interesting. I guess it's mostly like a black and white movie, basically, and yeah, cinematography was fine, you know, but it was enough to make me go, "Oh wow, this is a movie you have to watch," you know. Yeah, so it's a nothing movie that it's on Netflix. I think you can find it on there. Nothing really to talk about. Uh, the interesting part is the vampires take someone's heart and then they put it in a blender and they blend it up and they make a smoothie out of it. And I guess they get more out of the smoothie than just biting them and drinking their blood. So that was an interesting concept of just making a blood heart smoothie out of them. Yeah, overall, I would not recommend it. I'd give it like a half star. Like it did not interest me at all. Um, See, the most disappointing movie this year. Well, I haven't seen any movies this year, so I haven't had any disappointments yet. I'm still catching up on last year, as you can see. Alconde came out last year. Like I said, it was nominated for cinematography, so it was the only nomination I got. So I was like, oh, I'll watch this, see what it's all about. uh, all right. Another movie that I got an Oscar nomination that I actually thought was actually pretty good is a movie called Rustin. If you don't know, Rustin got nominated for Best Actor for now I'm forgetting his name, Domingo, I believe is his last name. Like I said, he was in The Color Purple as well, and he was like in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He was in that a couple years ago. So I've seen him here and there. Never really don't know much about him, but really had a good year with two movies like Color Purple, and he got nominated for Best Actor for Rustin. If you know Rustin's about a real guy. I forget his name now. It's something Rustin's last name, but Rustin was very. He was basically the guy who coordinated the million, or is it a? Oh, it's a March on Washington, a big civil rights. He was big in civil rights. He was a big civil rights guy. Of course, he's black, and he definitely coordinated a lot of important things that happened uh, in the '60s. You know, helping the civil rights movement. Coleman Domingo, yeah, that's it. Coleman Domingo. Oh, he's in Fear the Walking Dead. Okay, yeah, Coleman Domingo is the name of the actor, and he's playing Rustin here. And yes, Rustin. So we see this Rustin guy. He's very charismatic. He's the guy who gets things done. He's the guy you go to. Like, obviously, the most important figure is going to be Martin Luther King, and he's in the movie a lot. The character Martin Luther King Jr. Um, and he coordinates with him. He's like friends with him, and and of course he coordinated the I have a dream speech. That's basically the whole movie's about him trying to coordinate this whole march to Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. gives his most famous speech, and one of the most famous speeches of all time. I Have a Dream speech, which really shapes and changes, the civil rights movement. So he's very important to the civil rights movement. So it's kind of important. It's one of those movies you watch and you're like, okay, this is like a very important movie about important subject matter. So I like that about it. I like the history about it because I didn't know anything about Rustin. Never heard of this guy. And it's interesting how important he is to the civil rights movement, and kind of about how hard it is to organize something like that. It was very interesting because, of course, racism and all that, and he has to jump through a lot of hoops, and people didn't like him because he was definitely very out there, in your face kind of guy. But he had to do that to get things done. He was also gay, so there's this whole gay thing, which people didn't like him because he was gay, stuff like that, because that was looked down upon in the 60s as well. So he had two things going against him: being black and being gay. Two things that were kind of looked down upon on some people. Anyway, so overall, I thought it was a good movie. Like, I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars. I'd give it like a light recommend. Overall, I love the subject matter and learning of the history of this guy and what he did, and that this movie kind of brings some light and a spotlight on a guy who's very important, that we don't talk about. And of course, the very end is so great. If he everything pays off. He works so hard, goes through so much to get this organized, and then we get the I Dream. You don't hear the I Dream speech, I Have a Dream speech, but it's going to happen, and that's just a great historical moment. And so it's a very good ending to the movie that makes you, again, you learn about something. It makes you think about the civil rights movement and all that. So I would recommend Rustin if you haven't seen it. I think it's on Netflix. Yeah, it's on Netflix. So if you see that, I would check out Rustin. And Coleman Domingo gave a really great performance. Definitely was worth a nomination for Best Actor. And it's good because he's not an actor who's real famous, real well known. So this will definitely help his career, I think. Let's see, Abby. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire has been the most disappointing for me. Okay, yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. In fact, I'm trying to watch the first one, the Afterlife one. I haven't seen yet, and I'm like halfway through that movie. So I'm trying to watch Afterlife and then watch Frozen Empire, so I get kind of what was going on. Oh yeah, you already said that. Whoops. Nick agrees with you, Abby. Frozen Empire sucked. The Boys in the Boat also disappointing. Yeah, okay, I've heard of that one. I haven't seen that one. Yeah, great story. Clooney under delivered for me. Okay. Yeah, I've heard of Boys in the Boat. I haven't seen that one. That wasn't a big movie necessarily, but I heard some good things about it. All right. So I think that's kind of all the Oscar type movies. I'm glad I can kind of get through that. And I wanted to give a rundown just briefly here of my thoughts on movies that were nominated for Best Picture. Kind of ranked the movies, in my opinion. 10 movies nominated for Best Picture in last year. This is the 2023 year. And so for me, number 10, I'm going with Zone of Interest. It was just, like I said, it was the worst movie I probably saw all year. To me, it was so boring, and I couldn't. I was falling asleep watching that one. But yeah, definitely number 10 is Zone of Interest. Number 9 for me is Anatomy of Fall. Again, this movie people love. It's like number 1 on a lot of lists. I was just bored, and it was an uninteresting plot of the movie. Number 8, I have Maestro, which I just mentioned. Another just very boring movie about a person I just not care about. And yeah, so it's at number 8. Number 7, I have American Fiction, which I know, Mike, you probably have it higher than me. Again, there's some fun parts of it. There's some interesting parts to it. But overall, the ending just really killed the whole movie for me. So I have it number 7. Number 6, I have Poor Things. Again, it's such a weird movie. Some very disturbing things or gross things going on through it. It's not a movie I'd want to go back to, and all that. But it was more interesting than a lot of the movies before. It was more interesting than a lot of that stuff. Number 5, I have Barbie. Yeah, Barbie. It was the big movie of the year. I really did not like this movie. If you don't know, I did a review on this. I thought it was just so stupid. It wasn't really that funny to me. But the more I think about it, the more I liked Ryan Gosling's performance. And I liked Ken, and the I Am Ken scene is actually a pretty fun scene. So there's some fun moments, and obviously the costuming is really bright, some pretty good costuming there as well. To me, it's just a very woke movie of like, men are bad, women are good, and women have it so hard, and men have it so easy. I hated the whole plot, the whole idea behind the movie, I guess. Right. So Barbie at number 5, but I have it above Poor Things because at least Barbie didn't have. It wasn't as Nick would say, or not Nick, Ryan Schwell said. Barbie's not an uncomfortable movie. Poor Things is very uncomfortable, so I have Barbie just ahead of Poor Things because I can watch Barbie and not feel too uncomfortable. Number 4, I have Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, it's the longest movie on the list. It's like 3.5 hours, I think. It is way too long. It's pretty boring at times, but I really like the performances here, and there's some good stuff here, some good scenes and stuff. So I put it number 4. It's towards the top end of my. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it as much as these other movies. Number 3, I got Oppenheimer, which was the movie that won Best Picture and was one of the biggest movies of the year. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. I give it a light recommend. It wasn't the greatest movie for me. It was fine. I was so happy Cillian Murphy got best actor win. He's such a good actor, and he's one of those kind of character actors I feel like who doesn't star in movies, and so cool to see him star in a movie, win the Oscar of a movie that gets Best Picture. So that was really cool to see. It's a really interesting subject matter. Again, it's the opposite of Maestro. This is a very interesting character, I thought, and had an interesting story. And obviously, yeah, the whole how they made the atomic bomb. The whole style, all that stuff was very interesting to me. And learning a little bit of the history of Oppenheimer, I thought was really good. I think it was a little too long, um, and some of the other moments weren't that interesting. His personal life wasn't that interesting, I guess, as much. And I didn't like the back and forth between that and the trial. Didn't care so much about it. Also, Robert Downey Jr. So happy he won an Oscar. He definitely deserves it. He's such a good actor who should have won for playing Tony Stark in one of the Avenger movies. But I'll take it here. He got an Oscar. But yeah, Oppenheimer number 3. And then the 2 movies I really like are number 2, Past Lives is my second favorite movie that got nominated for Best Picture. That is such one of the best. To me, it was like the best screenplay of the year. The screenplay is so good. The dialogue is so well written. The acting of the 3 main actors is really well. They should have gotten Oscar nominations, but it couldn't fit in there. But overall, just a really well made movie, and I love the whole plot and premise of the story. If you don't know, of course, I've done a review on it before, and a lot of people have, and I think most people love this movie, and I thought it was a really good movie. It made it in my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Past Lives. And number 1, my favorite movie that got nominated for Best Picture is The Holdovers, which I know Mike didn't care for that much. I thought it was really good. I thought it had some good comedic moments. I love Paul Giamatti. It's one of his best performances, and I would love to see him win an Oscar, but it's hard because between him and Cillian Murphy, I was happy for either one. But Paul Giamatti was great. I thought one of my favorite performances of the year. I like the combination of drama and comedy. I thought was done very well. I love the 70s period of it, and I love just that it's about a movie about people who get to know each other and learn that we're not so different. I love that whole idea behind it. So yeah, overall, I thought a really excellent movie. The Holdovers at number 1. So that's my top 10, or that's me ranking the 10 Best Picture nominees. So I can get that out of the way. That I covered all the big Oscar movies there. All right, let's go to a movie I like quite a bit, and that is Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget, which is a sequel to Chicken Run. It came on Netflix last year, and again, it's one of those things. I really like the original Chicken Run, so when I saw there's a sequel, I'm like, I have to see the sequel because I'm such a fan. It's long. The original Chicken Run came out such a long time ago, so it seems like it took a long time to get the sequel out. And it's on Netflix, so it feels like just a Netflix dump kind of movie. So it doesn't really have that big high theatrical. So I felt like they probably didn't put as much into this as the original. The original, I think, was nominated for maybe, I don't know if it was maybe around the time I got nominated for like a best anime movie. I'm not sure, but yeah. So Chicken Run, it wasn't like I didn't really hear a lot about this movie watching it, and oops, I think I went out. I think I'm back. Um, I do love the British accents of the chicken ladies, you know, and it's kind of another story of, you know, the same villain comes back and she's taking these chickens, making the chicken nuggets. That's why it's called Dawn of the Nugget, and so it's kind of this, you know, rescue movie where the chickens are trying to rescue all these chickens captured by this evil lady, turning them into chicken nuggets, and so it's them trying to get into the place and rescue everybody. So it's that kind of movie, but overall, it was very enjoyable. I laughed at a couple, you know, a lot of scenes. I thought the ending was done very well, like a lot of action going on, and very good. And I'd say the only thing is they introduced this teenage chicken lady who's like the daughter of the Rocket Rooster or whatever, and the main girl character, chicken character from the first movie. They have a daughter who's kind of annoying throughout the movie, but overall, I thought it's worth a watch. If you like Chicken Run, it's a worthwhile, I think, sequel in my opinion. Oscar chat, Carrie Mulligan. Yes, Carrie Mulligan was the maestro. She got nominated. That's what I was thinking of. Her performance was so intense, uncomfortable at times, but wow. Nomination heavy, but she won nothing. I was amazed at that, to be honest. She's one of those, yeah, top actresses that has not won an Oscar. Oh, and you also say, you've seen 36 movies this year? That's crazy. I haven't seen any. I'm so behind. Ryan, loved the original Chicken Run. It was consistent, repeat watch. Yeah, growing up. Avoid the last one. I just thought it would be a Netflix. Yeah, I can see that. It's not as good as original, but I think it's a worthwhile movie in my opinion. All right, let's go with a movie that was kind of a big Christmas movie this last year, and that is Wonka. Kind of a prequel to the original, I guess you can say, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But it's Wonka. It's a young Wonka and how he got into making it, how he started his factory. Basically, played by Timothy Chalamet. Um, I'm a huge fan of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Love Gene Wilder. It's one of his greatest performances, and it's hard. Gene Wilder is so good as Willy Wonka. I have a hard time seeing anybody else in that role. And to do that role, you have to find someone very special to fill that role. And Timothy Chalamet is a good actor. I mean, he's an Oscar-nominated actor. He's in every other movie. Seems like has Timothy Chalamet in it. He is in so many movies. He's very, very popular right now. So I get why they want to put him in as Wonka. He doesn't quite capture the Wonka feel for me like Gene Wilder did. So it's like it was a nice try, but it's like he didn't do it for me. I didn't think it was a very good performance for Timothy Chalamet, and I don't. He's a fine actor. You know, he's one of the best young actors we got. So I get why they put him there because they wanted a young actor, you know, playing it because the prequel. But it's like, man, to play that role, you just got to have a. To me, Gene Wilder is just a comedic genius. So it's like, if you're gonna do Willy Wonka again, you got to find another comedic genius to play that role, and that's very hard to do. Like Johnny Depp was horrible as Willy Wonka in the Charlie and Chocolate Factory movie, the Tim Burton movie. Hated that performance. He did not capture that character at all. And Timothée Chalamet doesn't. I know he tries, but he doesn't quite capture that character either for me. And maybe that's just me being like, oh, you know, old school, you know, Gene Wilder. Nobody can do it but Gene Wilder. Like, I don't want to say that. Like, I'm okay if somebody else wants to try the character, but man, the bar is set so high, it's really hard to make a good Wonka movie, I think, in my opinion, after that movie. Um, Overall, yeah, I was not a fan of Wonka. Um, it's supposed to be this, you know, quirky musical kind of thing, and I thought the music was not particularly that great. Like, there's no song that really stuck with me at the end. So I thought, you're gonna do a musical, you got to come up with some really good music that leaves you singing it after you watch the movie. And I didn't think the musical numbers were particularly that great. The story wasn't particularly that great either. It's all about, you know, he gets bamboozled, which is weird because like I thought he was smarter than that, but somehow he gets bamboozled into working at this orphanage place or something, or bakery. I can't remember what it was, but not bakery, but anyways, he gets kind of bamboozled and he's basically like a slave with all these other people who got bamboozled, who owe money. Um, And then, but he's trying to start this chocolate shop thing, but all the other chocolate shop people won't let him in because they control everything. I don't know. I just was not that fan of the story overall. Uh, and it's crazy because it felt like if and I know the original had some very magical elements to it, but this felt even more. It felt like it didn't feel real. Like he opens up his box thing and he has all these magical potions and he makes these magical chocolate that makes you fly, and it's like, okay, I guess I mean, yeah, the original had like the drink that makes you float, so I guess that's not out of the ordinary. Or and the original has stuff like shrinks. One guy gets shrunk into a little person, or like a tiny person. So there's some magical elements to the original, but this one, I don't know why. I just couldn't get into all the magical chocolate that this guy does and how he does everything so perfect. And it's just, I don't know. And I know Mike, he said this maybe better than me, that the movie just felt like it didn't feel like the past. It's supposed to be in the past, but it feels like more. I mean, people are dressed in old time clothes, but the cinematography makes it feel like the original Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory. It felt like a London, and it felt like it didn't feel like a perfect place. It felt dirty, felt like a lived in place. Well, this place didn't feel lived in. Felt everything looked too shiny, and everybody's clothes looked too good. So it just didn't look real at times. I know Mike, like I said, Mike from Did You See That says it better than me, I think. Um, yeah, and just I don't know, just didn't care for the characters that much in the ending. And maybe the worst thing is the Oompa Loompas. Hugh Grant shows up as Oompa Loompa, but it's so CGI'd and he looks too small, like or something. I don't know. It just didn't look right. It just looked like a weird CGI character that didn't really look like an Oompa Loompa. It just looked like too small or something, even for Oompa Loompa. And I'm like, why not just get little people to play the part? That's what they did in the original, and that's what makes it more real. And I would enjoy that more. And plus, you get to get some more actors some jobs. Anyways, so I didn't like the Oompa Loompa or Hugh Grant's performance there. Um, yeah, I agree with you here, Ryan. See, yeah, Chalamet tried too hard to be eccentric. Yeah, because Willy Wonka is this kind of eccentric character. Yeah, so Tim Chalamet really tried to up the eccentricism, if that's a word, of the character. And yeah, I felt like it was trying too hard, and he wasn't feeling the character. Gene Wilder didn't seem too bizarre at all. Hard act to follow. Yeah, it's a really hard act to follow, and that's why when you try to make when you try to remake movies, it doesn't work because it's hard to capture that same magic of the original. And this is another one where it's like you can't quite capture that magic of the Willy Wonka character or the movie, and it didn't get there for me. Yeah, I just didn't like most anything in this movie. The only thing I liked is I thought the costuming was really good, and I thought the cinematography was actually quite good. The set design, I should say, the set designs great. Like it doesn't tell you where they are, but it looks like they're in this. It's like they're in this made up place, but it reminds me of England. Like I think they're kind of in like London kind of area. It has that English look to it overall, but I don't think they tell you exactly where it takes place. But I don't know. It'd been more interesting to me if you're talking about young Wonka. A more interesting story would have been like he, he starts working in a chocolate factory, and he has like a really good, obviously he's really good at making chocolate, and then they send him on a mission, like an adventure of like finding, ingredients to chocolate or something, and he meets the Oompa Loompas, and he meets these eccentric characters, and he, it could have been a story like that, but this story didn't seem like it should have been the prequel. Didn't seem to fit, anyways. But yeah, so Wonka for me, another like 2-star movie. Didn't care for it. Um, all right, a movie that I caught finally on Max, which is HBO Max, whatever. That I really liked was 42, a movie called 42, which is about the Jackie Robinson story, with the late great actor, who died somewhat recently. Chadwick Boseman playing. This is before he got really big with the Black Panther character, but 42 he's playing Jackie Robinson. This movie came out a while ago, and I've always wanted to watch it, and I never got to it. Finally, I got to it. It was on Max, and I was like, oh, I need to watch this movie. Yeah, really good movie. I actually thought it was a really good biopic of a really important character. I mean, really important person in real life, Jack Robinson. You know, the first person to break the color barrier in baseball. And it's funny. We have movies like, in fact, there's a movie that came out this last year about the guy who broke the color barrier for the NBA, basically, or professional basketball. And we've had one with football as well. You always get these movies where, obviously it's a big moment where, someone breaks the color barrier, but nothing's bigger than Jackie Robinson. To me, that's the growing up. I've always heard about Jackie Robinson and heard about him, how how big of a moment that is, him being the first black baseball player, whatever, in Major League Baseball. And so to me, this the most important story dealing with, breaking the color barrier in a sport. Anyway, so it's a very important story to tell. So I'm glad they did it. And I thought they did a really good job. Jack Boseman's great in the lead. Also, Harrison Ford's really good in the movie, plays a very important part of it. And you see his struggles of trying to get into professional baseball and all the racism that goes against him, and him staying strong anyways. But yeah, it's an important story, and I thought a really told story that everybody should watch, and that's 42. So there, Abby, I give a very good recommendation for that movie, 42. All right. Uh, okay. Okay. Another big movie I saw that I was really looking forward to, but I was, to be honest, a little disappointed with, and that is The Iron Claw, which came out last year. Another kind of biopic, starring what's his name, the High School Musical guy, kind of stars in the movie, and I was really looking forward to this movie because I know very well about the story of the Von Erich family, the wrestling family. I'm a big wrestling fan, and I do love wrestling history. So I've read some wrestling history. I've seen documentaries on wrestling history, so I'm fairly familiar with the history of wrestling, professional wrestling, and I'm a big fan of the sport. I guess you want to call it sports entertainment. And the Iron Claw is about this Von Erich family, the true story of this family that the dad, Fritz Von Erich, was this wrestler way back when. And he had, well, in this movie, he has four sons. In real life, he had five sons. And they all kind of got involved in the wrestling business. And he kind of pushes them to be a champion because he never got to be like a champion. So he's obviously pushing a little too hard. And the whole movie's kind of about him probably not being the greatest dad, really pushing this, doing everything he can. I mean, but at the same time, he's looking out for his sons. He wants them to succeed, but at the same time, kind of pushes them a little too much to be great. And so he has like his own wrestling promotion, and the oldest, which is Kevin Von Erich, played by the main guy, which now I'm forgetting his name, but you know what I'm talking about. um, he really wants to be a champion for his dad, and he works the hardest out of all the sons. He's the oldest, and so of course, so he's looking out for everybody, kind of, and he works out, and he's in great shape. I mean, incredible shape, best shape out of everybody. Um, I wish I could remember the guy's name now because I could talk more about him. Because the actor who plays him is always been a great shaped guy who's always had great abs, and but he really bulked up for this role to play a professional wrestler. Um, so it's about him and then his brothers, David Von Erich and Kerry Von Erich, are kind of the main three. They all get involved in the wrestling business and are very successful and all this. And then they have a younger brother. I think in the movie it's Mike Von Erich. There's also another brother that's not in the movie. I think Chris Von Erich or something like that, if I remember right. Anyways, and it's such a tragic story. So I was glad they did it. And there's some interesting things about this true story, and it's so strange. I mean, it's so crazy. You think it's made up. It's like, no, it's really happened. But uh, David Von Erich, I'm gonna spoil some things. Real life happened. It happens in the movie. But David Von Erich, he dies kind of unexpectedly. Um, And so then Kerry Von Erich, the third brother, he gets pushed into the heavyweight role, the championship role, and he wins the championship from Ric Flair. in Texas, because the Von Erichs are very popular. They're like the most popular name in Texas wrestling. I mean, they're huge in Texas. Um, Zac Efron, that's it. Sorry, I can't remember his name. Zac Efron plays Kerry Von Erich, the oldest brother, and kind of the main character of the movie. But Kevin Von Erich, yeah. Anyway, so Kerry Von Erich actually has a lot of success. Even goes to WWF and wins the Intercontinental title, which is the second best title in WWF. And so, and I thought he was a very good wrestler in real life. Like I remember watching, he was called the Texas Tornado, and I thought he had a great look. I mean, they were in great shape. They looked great, and I thought he was a good wrestler. Unfortunately, he had drug problems. He got in a motorcycle wreck and he lost his foot, and he had an amputated foot, but he still wrestled on the amputated foot, surprisingly enough. But he had drug problems, and well, then, anyways, to say the least, without spoiling everything, but well, he had a brother actually that died as a kid that you'd only see in the movie. So yeah, there's actually six sons in the family, and two of them die unexpectedly, and then three of them commit suicide. So the only brother to not die who's still alive today is Kevin Von Erich, which is absolutely crazy. And well, man, how tragic is that to have two of your brothers die unexpectedly and then three of your brothers commit suicide? I mean, holy cow, that would just kill you as a person to have. And at the end, he has no brothers, and it's very sad. I mean, it's a very sad movie, and I knew that because I knew the story going into it, because it's such an incredible story. And it's anybody who's a wrestling fan, I think, knows about the Von Erich family. It's tragedy that it is, and so obviously a lot of emotional moments and stuff in the movie. I think it's a very interesting story. My negatives about the movie are that Zac Efron, I don't think, is a good enough actor to play the main character, and he's not big enough to be a wrestler either. Like Zac Efron bulked up, like he's bulked up like a wrestler, but he seems so short. When he was on screen, I just thought, oh my gosh, he needs to be taller, like to really look like a heavyweight champion. He didn't seem to fit out there with some of the other characters. He just felt too short. And no offense to Zac Efron. So to me, it was a huge miscast. Like I would not have cast Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, the main character. In fact, I thought, now I forget the name, the guy who played Kerry Von Erich, who's in a show called The Bear. I thought he was the best actor in the movie. And to me, he could have carried the main character, Kevin Von Erich. Like I would have switched those two roles or something, or I probably wouldn't have Zac Efron in the movie at all. I'd put the guy who played Kerry Von Erich as Kevin Von Erich. He wasn't big enough. I mean, he didn't bulk up enough, maybe, but performance-wise, I thought he gave the emotional performance that you needed out of the character. So to me, Zac Efron, bad casting choice, was not an interesting actor in the role. And he looks weird. He just has this huge, like Zac Efron obviously like bulked up, and he doesn't look like Zac Efron. Like he has this very square jaw all of a sudden, and like I don't know, it looks like he worked out too much. But that's one of the major criticisms. The wrestling, I think, was actually fine. I've heard some people criticize wrestling, but for that time period, that was actually pretty accurate to the wrestling at that time, I think. So I thought the wrestling, actually, the scenes were done very well. And I hate that they didn't show the Ric Flair. Like I was waiting for that scene where Ric Flair wrestles Kerry Von Erich and he wins. And especially, when you watch a documentary on it, it's a very emotional moment in the documentary. And they totally cut that out of the movie. They just go, Kerry Von Erich is going to wrestle Ric Flair, and then you see him like go up to the ring, and then we cut to he won it. And I was like, I'm like, man, I wanted to see a scene where he wrestles Ric Flair, wins the title, and it should have been this very emotional moment of the movie, and they just totally cut it out. So I did not like that they cut that part out. That could have been done much better. And then it's just a weird moment when like. Is it David dies? David Von Erich just dies unexpectedly, and it's obviously very sad because it's the first death that the family has to deal with, and they're all just very shocked and sad. And yet the dad it felt like it didn't feel like a realistic reaction to it, because David dies, and then there's a scene where Zac Efron as Kevin walks into the house, and he doesn't know that his brother is dead. and his dad's just sitting there like eating food on the table. And he's like, "Oh yeah, your brother David died," and he's like, "What?" And it's like, really, that's the way you do that scene? Like it felt weird. And then right after that, after the funeral, they have a funeral, and then the dad's like, "Okay, your brother's dead, and he was going to be the next champion, but now he's dead. Let's forget about that. Let's concentrate on who's the next champion." I'm like, wow, that's pretty cold. Your son died, and you're just like, okay, let's move. It felt like you moved on way too quick. I'm like, all right, let's move on, and I'm like, no, I think that would ruin you for a while. And maybe that's true to real life, but at the time I'm watching the scene, I'm like, I can't believe a dad would be that nonchalant about his son dying. I don't know. Some of that felt off to me. And one scene that I did not like about this movie, again, I'm spoiling the heck out of this movie. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling it because it happened in real life. So I have to talk about it, but and kind of what happened in the movie here. But Carrie Von Erich, I mean, the emotional moment maybe in the movie is Carrie Von Erich commits suicide, and he does in real life, and it's so sad because like, man, he's such a good wrestler. He had so much, and he's going through a divorce and a lot of bad things happening. But man, suicide, like, and there's a problem with that is, that two of his brothers already committed suicide, so he felt like, well, I guess I'm just going to join in on the whole suicide thing, which is just very tragic. And so that scene happens, and it's very, sad and dramatic, most dramatic scene in the movie. But we see this scene where he's like in the afterlife. He's on a boat on the water, and he goes to a dock and he gets off, and his other brothers are there, and they kind of welcome him and they hug. And it bothers me because it's like, okay, is this saying suicide is okay? Like, hey, this guy's happy now. He's with his brothers in the afterlife, so suicide was not that big of a deal. And to me, it's a bad take on suicide. Like I watching it, and maybe this is just me, but me watching it just goes, suicide is such a horrible thing to happen. It's such a tragic thing when it happens to people. It's a very sad thing to happen and should not be glamorized at all. And I feel like it was glamorized a little bit with that. It was like, oh, now he's in the afterlife with his brothers. And of course, that's not how the afterlife works, anyways. But necessarily, I don't know. That bothered me a bit. I thought that was not. I thought that was done in bad taste in my sense. Uh, that's just me, but I didn't like that part. Anyways, so overall, like to me, I'd give it 3 out of 5 stars. I give it a light recommend because I did think it's a good story. There's some interesting moments there. It's very tragic, very sad. I thought they told it, a lot of it pretty well. This wrestling stuff I thought was done well, and the ending with him with his, he does have a family though, and he kind of has to come to terms with his brothers are dead, but he has a family that's there for him, so and the only positive thing to say is that Carrie Von Erich lived, or not Carrie, Kevin, I was getting mixed up. Kevin Von Erich did live on, and he's alive today, and so it's good that the tragedy of the Von Erichs didn't take everybody, and that at least one of them came out alive. Anyways, but yeah, so overall, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Depends. I don't know if you're not a wrestling fan. I'm curious how you think about it. Being a wrestling fan, I appreciate it more, I think, but that's just me. I'm interested in, I know Mike, I think, liked it quite a bit. Ryan, maybe, I think you're a wrestling fan, so maybe you liked it quite a bit too. See, I hated Ric Flair in the movie. Didn't do justice. That's a huge criticism of the movie. Yeah, the guy who played Ric Flair did not do great Ric Flair. It's hard to do good Ric Flair, I think. But Zac Efron, I thought, done amazing, and overall definitely enjoyed it, coming from knowing nothing of the story. Okay, so he didn't know anything of the story. And maybe this is me. To me, I would rather get a guy who looked like a wrestler and put him in there, who's bulked up and looked like he could do the stuff. But it's hard because you also need an actor who can do the emotional moments as well. That moment when Sensei, you'll be, yeah, that scene, that was towards the end. Yeah, where he's sad because his brothers are dead, but he has 2 sons, and the sons say, "We can be your brother, Dad." Yeah, that's like, oh, how can you not cry when they say that? That whole thing, and that made it kind of satisfactory at the end. I mean, it's hard to be satisfied because it's a really sad story, but at least, and those 2 sons became professional wrestlers themselves, and they wrestle with AEW. So the Von Erich family still lives on, interestingly enough, in that. Anyway, so yeah, that was the Iron Claw, pretty big movie. Um, All right. So I've gone through most of the major movies. I got a couple more stuff to kind of talk about that I don't think I'll spend necessarily too much time on. Um, I watched a couple documentaries that are actually really good. One was At the Heart of Gold, which is a documentary that's on Max. There's also a documentary on Netflix that's about the same subject matter that I haven't seen, but it all deals with the women's gymnastics team that was evidently sexually molested for decades by this one guy who I forget his name, but he was the what do you call it? The trainer. He was like the Olympic trainer guy that worked all these Olympic training places, and he dealt with all these young girls coming through wanting to be Olympic gymnastics, you know. And yeah, so he sexually molested like tons, like hundreds of little girls through decades, and it's, I mean, most like one of the worst human beings you'd ever meet. And the guy's like really nice guy, and that's how he got them. He got on people's good sides, and no one expected anything because the coaches are like horrible. And this kind of opened my eyes about Olympics and what I hate. It kind of makes me hate. I love watching. Like women's gymnastics is one of my favorite things to watch in the Olympics. It's so fun to watch the different skill sets and stuff and flipping around and and America does pretty good too, so it's fun watching the American team. And girls anyways, guys is not as interesting. Girls is interesting because they're usually a little more they're a little more do a lot more flips and stuff and a lot more interesting stuff anyways. um so it's so sad to see that all of them were traumatized by this one guy and that nobody stepped up, to help these girls. And it just makes it, it's a documentary that makes you very angry. And it's a really good documentary, but I mean, obviously it's a hard subject to watch about, and there's interviews with all these girls. I mean, they got a lot of good interviews, a lot of good footage of, all the stuff I didn't know about any of this stuff. I heard about it, but didn't really know a lot about it. And man, it opened your eyes to it. And man, these coaches are horrible. These girls are like little girls. They're 12, 13. I say little girls. They're like, 11, 12, 13. I don't know. And these coaches drive them so hard, and they get injured all the time because they're doing these very, difficult things, doing flips in the air, and it's easy to hurt yourself doing these different, things like, running really fast, and then you have to hit this pommel horse thing, and you have to do a bunch of flips. I mean, yeah, it's so easy to hurt your legs, and stuff, and land wrong, and to do it right. Anyway, so you get hurt all the time, but yet you can't complain about being hurt, or the coaches get after you, or they kick you off the team. So you have to get hurt. You can't complain about it, and you have to go and do it again, all hurt. And they're just girls, and I'm just like, man, like, why do we do this? I just hate it, and it makes me hate Olympic coaching overall. Like, it would be one thing if they're adults, but it's like they're just little girls, like, and you're just bullying them, and these coaches are all just horrible. And anyway, so there's this trainer guy who's nice to them, so they're all like, oh, the coaches are horrible, but we like this trainer guy. But then the trainer guy ends up sexually molesting them for decades, so it's like, okay, this guy's the worst guy of them all. And so it's all about what happened with that, and all these people talking about this guy. And even when some girls thought what he was doing was wrong and they tried to go, no one took their side. They always took the side of this trainer guy. And so no one could complain. No one would no one would be on side of these girls. That's just horrible. And at the end, you finally see the trial where this guy gets put on trial, and he gets put away for life. Like, this guy's gonna be in jail until he dies. Luckily, and he can't hurt anybody anymore. But that scene at the end where all the girls come up and talk about their personal stories, oh my gosh, it is hard to watch. But yeah, it's just eye opening. One of the part that gets me is one of the dads. I think he, like, all these girls are telling their story in court basically about what this guy did, and this one dad gets up and he says something like, Judge, can you give me 5 minutes with this guy? Can you put this guy in a room with me alone and just give me 5 minutes? Like, because he just wanted to beat the crap out of this guy for what he did to, like, his daughter. And of course, the judge's like, and of course, obviously, the judge's like, no, we can't let you in a room with this guy alone for 5 minutes. And the guy's like, okay, just give me 1 minute. I just want 1 minute in a room with this guy, in a closet. Put me in the closet with this guy for 1 minute because I just want to beat the crap out of this guy. And he ends up rushing the guy because he wanted to beat him up so bad. And the police had to kind of tackle him and arrest him, and take him out of court. And it's just a crazy scene. But yeah, I'm totally understand. Like, yeah, this guy should get the crap beat out of him. In fact, I think he got stabbed in prison. I think he's still alive in prison, but I think he got stabbed at one point, which is like good for him. Like he should, bad things should happen to that guy. But yeah, so it's a hard documentary to watch, but yeah, I think a really good one. At the Heart of Gold, if you can stand that kind of subject matter. Another really good documentary I just watched actually I finished finally the other day. It's called FPS first person shooter. So that's how, if you looking it up, you have to put FPS first, and then which stands for first person shooter. And it's a documentary on first person shooter video games. And I'm a huge fan of first person shooter games like Call of Duty. I love Call of Duty games and Medal of Honor and a lot of that stuff. And back in the day, I played, Doom was huge when I was a kid. And what's it called? Now I'm forgetting the other one. The first one was really huge. I used to play on a computer, in fact, where you're like shooting Nazis. That's a pretty good first person shooter. And then Doom was huge, and then like Duke Nukem. Eventually, to me, the one that really changed the game was GoldenEye. Like I played on Nintendo 64, I played hours and hours of GoldenEye with my friends, shooting each other. And then the Call of Duty games, the Modern Warfare especially, have been huge. Anyways, but there have been so many first-person shooters, and it's a huge genre of video games. So it was fun. It was fun getting. Like I said, I love video game documentaries, and so it was a really good one. If you like video games, if you like first-person shooter games, it's a really good documentary where they go through the whole history of the first like computer games that were kind of first-person shooter, and then through all the big ones, all the big named first-person shooter games. Quake, Half-Life is in there, Turok. They talk a little bit in there. And some games I never heard of are they mentioned too, and they talk to the people who develop the games and who come up with the games. And so a lot of good interviews there, and a lot of footage of the video games. The only thing I would say is it's like 4.5 hour movie documentary, so it is like the longest documentary I've ever watched. So I had to watch it in spurts. I couldn't watch it all in one, so it's really long, 4.5 hours, but man, you get a lot of cool information out of it. So definitely check that out if you can, if you like video games. A movie that's a little obscure that I want to talk about briefly that I saw the other day was a movie called Carney, which came out in 1980. And you never heard this movie, and you probably haven't. I don't think it did anything in the movie theater. But it stars Gary Busey, kind of one of the main actors. Jodie Foster's in it. She's like only 17, I think, in the movie. So it's a young Jodie Foster. Oh, sorry. So we're talking 1980. So we're talking right after she did Taxi Driver, which got nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So she's and she used to do Disney. She did a couple Disney movies in the 70s. So she's kind of getting away, and she's doing more adult roles here. Definitely like I guess Taxi Driver is a bit of an adult role, but she was still a little girl in that. But this was her kind of getting more of an adult role movie, you can say. But Gary Busey, also the other guy is named Robbie Robinson, and he's like the lead singer of a band called The Band. And so it was one of his first acting, I think maybe his acting debut, which I've never really seen him do acting. I don't know much about him, but it was basically those are the three main characters of the movie. And they're carnival workers. Gary Busey and Robbie Robertson, I believe his name is, they play two carnival workers anyways. And Jodie Foster kind of wants to leave her little town and wants to join the carnival, this traveling carnival. And her and Gary Busey, have a relationship. They kind of become a couple, basically. And so she joins the carnival or whatever. And so we kind of just see this carnival and traveling. And anyways, and the only reason why I saw it is because my dad told me a story about watching this back in 1980, I guess. He saw this movie, and I remember him telling me this because I was like, I've never heard of this movie, and I mean, some big actors, Gary Busey and Jodie Foster, but it's like, wow, I never knew this movie existed. But my dad remembers watching it, and he told me about a scene, and I won't spoil it, I guess, but there's a scene towards the end that was very shocking, and so he remembers being very shocked by it when he saw it. And so he's told me about this, watching this movie before, and I always remember thinking, I need to watch this movie, Carney, because my dad has such a vivid memory of seeing this movie. Anyway, so I looked it up on YouTube, and you can see it on YouTube. Anyways, and I would say, yeah, it's not a well-made movie necessarily. It wasn't a bad movie though. I thought it was interesting. I thought Gary Busey is actually really good in it, and Gary Busey is just coming off of the Buddy Holly story where he got nominated for Best Actor. So this is definitely like peak Gary Busey, I think, as an actor. And I thought he was actually really good. And Gary Busey is such an interesting actor. He has such a goofy grin when he smiles. It's so goofy, but he's such a likable. He can play likable characters, I think, very well. He's actually a pretty likable character in the movie, and he's kind of a fun character. He has a lot of charisma, and he's not a bad-looking guy, I would say. So I can see that, like, Gary Busey definitely was. He could have been even more. I mean, like I said, he got nominated for Best Actor for Buddy Holly story, so he had kind of a leading man presence about him that he could have been even bigger. I think, he did a romantic comedy after this called like Fooling Around. I think that wasn't big. He come bigger for, like, playing parts in like the Predator 2, Under Siege, and the Lethal Weapon first movie. He had a good role in that. So he has some good roles here and there later on. But anyways, uh, yeah, he was really good. But that's about where the positives. Again, I'd give it like 2.5 stars. I think it's a light, not recommended. I don't think it's a terrible movie. It just lacks plot. It doesn't really have much plot. It's just them at a carnival most of the time. And then at the very, like, 20 minutes left in the movie, all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's a bad guy that wants to, you know, ruin their carnival, and they have to stop him. So the bad guy in the plot really doesn't happen until like wait till the movie's almost over, and they're like, oh, okay, now we got kind of. I mean, the main plot is just this Jodie Foster character who wants to be in the carnival, and she starts a relationship with Gary Busey's character. And spoil the movie too much, but I doubt many people watching this will watch this movie or have seen this movie. But she ends up sleeping with the other guy, Robbie Robinson's character, which makes absolutely no sense because they hate each other throughout the movie, and all of a sudden they like kind of sleep together, and or they're about to, and it's like, what? This came out of nowhere. Now it's like a love triangle, but it never goes anywhere. That whole love triangle idea, I guess. And maybe the worst part of the movie is that Jodie Foster, I think, was 17 in real life, and her character is 18. And Gary Busey is like 30. They're both Gary Busey and Robbie Robinson are like in their mid 30s, and they both are like, or at least Gary Busey's character is pining over this girl and is like really flirting with her and like sleeps with her, and it just feels a little creepy because it's like, okay, this guy's almost 20 years older than Jodie Foster, and Jodie Foster is like 17. She looks like she could be like 14 or 15. I mean, she's kind of a petite woman, kind of small petite woman, anyways. Jodie Foster, and she could almost play younger than what she was. I mean, so there's a bit of a creep factor there where I'm like, okay, I feel like it was miscast. Like, I would like someone a little bit older looking. I wouldn't feel so creeped out by Gary Busey wanting to sleep with this young girl. And to be honest, Jodie Foster, like, she's fine looking, but she's not like the most attractive woman I've ever seen. And they try to make her a little sexy in the movie, but I'm like, I'm not really not. I'm more into Emma Stone than I am to Jodie Foster personally. So it wasn't a good role for her, but she was trying to do more adult stuff, I think, at that moment in her career. Not her best moment as an actress, I think. But anyways, overall, I would say the ending is actually pretty good. There's actually a pretty good scene at the end that's interesting. Um, overall, I would say it's not a movie you need to check out, but an interesting one that I got to see, Carney. Another interesting movie, not a very good movie, actually a really bad movie, is a movie called Manhunter. And if you don't know Manhunter is the first movie adaptation of it's adaptation of the book Red Dragon, which is the first book that has Hannibal Lecter in it, which is a series of books with Hannibal Lecter, which most famously we know him from Silence of the Lambs, is the big movie with Hannibal Lecter in it, and there's also a TV show, of course. But anyways, Manhunter came out in like 80, I don't know, was it 86 or something like that. And I'm doing a Hannibal Lecter series with two individuals, one named Ryan Cam and other Jake Collins, who both have YouTube channels. Ryan Cam has his channels, Ryan Cam. Uh, Jake Collins, his is 3D Jake, I believe it's called. It's his YouTube channel. Two guys I've known for a while, but the first time I've collaborated with either one, really. Or second time with Ryan, first time with Jake. So I was glad to get to collaborate with those two because I've enjoyed their channels quite a bit, and they collaborate with a lot of my friends already. But I agreed to go through all the Hannibal Lecter movies and TV show with them. So we've seen two so far. We reviewed two movies so far. Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs is the second movie. So the next one's Hannibal, and then there's Red Dragon, and then there's a prequel. I forget it's called something about Hannibal. Anyways, and so we're on the second of 5 movies that we're watching. But the first movie, Manhunter, which you probably never knew existed because it did terrible in the box office. And it's so weird to think that there's a movie before Silence of the Lambs that has Hannibal Lecter and Anthony Hopkins isn't in it. Instead, it's Brian Cox. Brian Cox is a really good actor, but I think they didn't know what to do with the story or with the character. They didn't really nail the Hannibal Lecter character. I mean, he plays him as a smart guy who's in prison, who's sinister. I mean, who's scheming, I guess, a little bit, but he doesn't really bring out that scary, sinister side. Like he doesn't seem like a scary character. When you see Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, it's a very scary character. He's very sinister, very character that gives you the heebie-jeebies. Brian Cox doesn't do that quite in this movie, Manhunter. They would redo this movie in Red Dragon, which comes out later, which has Hannibal Lecter in it, and Ed Norton plays the main character, which is a much better movie than this one. But Manhunter, just follows this main character who's, again, kind of like Silence of the Lambs. He's trying to find a serial killer called the Tooth Fairy who murders people, and then he murders families. Actually, he murders like whole families, and then he takes their teeth or something like that. And he makes like a teeth thing. I don't know. It's one of those weird serial killer things. And the guy who plays the serial killer, Tom Noonan, actually does a pretty good job, I thought, in the role. He has a creepy look to him already, and he was like in Last Action Hero. He played a axe murderer in that movie. So he's actually really good at playing creepy characters, I think. And he's kind of right for the character, the serial killer, who doesn't come into the movie until like 30 minutes or an hour into the movie. Yeah, it's like you're like halfway through the movie and you finally get the Tooth Fairy character, the bad guy, the serial killer guy. And there's this whole thing where he has like this relationship with a blind girl, but then he gets jealous because he thinks she's cheating on him. And then he goes to terrorize her. And that's when we get the main character kind of catches on to him and tries to capture him anyways. And the movie overall is very boring, very uninteresting kind of murder mystery kind of story. To me, the best scenes are the Tom Noonan scenes because he's so creepy that his scenes, I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually kind of scary and creepy, the stuff that he's doing. But the main character I didn't think was really that good. Brian Cox, of course, he's a good actor, but he doesn't do a great job here. And there's hardly any action till the very end. There's some action where they finally capture Tooth Fairy guy, the serial killer, and saves this blind woman who he's terrorizing in the end. And the movie just lacks, and I said this in my review when we did a couple weeks ago, a week or two ago, is that it felt like it didn't have a score to it. It felt like a lot of scenes, like I kept watching it going, feels like needs to be a musical score. Like they're lacking a musical score to keep the scene interesting because two people are talking, there are pauses, and I remember just thinking, this just feels so weird, like they're missing something. Like I think, and the cinematography the editing was really bad. I think really bad editing, a lot of quick shots of stuff going on, and like I said, it's paced terribly. But yeah, overall, Manhunter, I thought was a really bad movie. Luckily, it gets better with Silence of the Lambs, so I watched that for that. But it was interesting to finally see a movie I heard about. It's just so weird that it exists. All right, one more movie to talk about. I think everybody left. I don't think anybody's in my chat. I got one person watching. I'm coming to about 2 hours, so luckily I'm ending this right now. But again, I had so many movies to talk about to catch up what I've been talking about. So, but the last movie I'm going to talk about is The Marvels. which came out last year. It was an MCU movie. Um, Not one I was exactly anticipating watching. It's a movie that I think I said this before it came out. I remember talking about this movie and saying this movie is going to bomb big time. I think everybody knows it. I feel like everybody knew this movie was going to be terrible and it's going to bomb, and it did. It bombed horribly. It's probably the dark MCU or Disney has done so terribly the last couple of years, and this is almost maybe the darkest moment is the Marvels. Nobody wanted this movie. Nobody cares about these characters, and nobody really likes what's her name, Miss Captain Marvel, whatever. Like the movie did pretty good, but it was in between two Avenger movies that did really really good, so it kind of got caught up in the Avengers momentum. It did really well, Captain Marvel, with Brie Larson, but I didn't care for that movie. It wasn't a terrible movie. I think I gave it 2.5 stars. It was like barely not recommendable movie. Again, Brie Larson's not bad. She's a good actress and all that, and she's good looking too. I think she looks good in the suit. Um, but overall, it was overall a character. I just at the end, like I didn't care about this character that much. She didn't have anything going for her that made me go. When you have great characters like Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and Black Widow, Black Panther. There's all these really interesting characters through that MCU. Even Ant-Man. There's something to them that you're like, wow, I'm really interested in this actor, this character. And Captain Marvel just one of those where I'm like, I just never really got into the character. She's just over. She's like Superman. She's just like overly powered person who can't be defeated, and just not that interesting of a character. I think those kind of characters to me aren't that interesting. Anyways, and the whole story, I don't know. I wasn't into it too much. So this is basically a sequel to Captain Marvel, but we add in Miss Marvel from the TV show Miss Marvel, which was a really terrible TV show. And Kamala Khan is a character name, I think, who's this Muslim girl who has a magic bracelet that gives her these powers. Not a real interesting character. And then you have what's her name, Ram Shambo, whatever her name is, who's the daughter of a friend of Captain Marvel, who who's in the Wanda, what's it called, the Vision Wanda show, WandaVision, and she appears in that show. So you're getting two characters from two shows that I didn't think were that great, and a character from a movie I didn't think that was great. So you got three female characters that I was not interested at all. So you already have a problem there. And the whole movie is them kind of teaming up together to stop this one lady who's a Kree, I think, who's fighting against a Skull. So you're getting more Kree and Skull stuff, which I don't really care much about the Krees and the Skulls. In fact, I don't care about the Skulls. We've had so much plot lines with the Skrulls that I'm like, I'm over the Skrulls and the whole plot line of they're trying to find a planet, trying to find a home, and all that. And the Kree, we've done with the Kree with the Guardians of the Galaxy. We had the one villain there, so she seemed like just another, not a very interesting villain, really. In fact, to be honest, she's almost like in the right, because her planet got destroyed because of Captain Marvel, and she's just trying to save her planet, her people. So she is almost like the morally right person in the story, and she's the villain. So I almost feel more for her than anybody else. I'm like, yeah, I get why she's doing what she's doing. She's trying to save her people, but she's a villain because she's trying to defeat Captain Marvel and all that, and she's trying to kill other planets and stuff and get their resources, I guess. And she has that. She doesn't have a Finley Stone, but she has that same big hammer thing that the guy in the Guardians of the Galaxy had. And I don't get what that weapon is. And there's problems with it. It's like, she's just a regular, it seemed like she's just supposed to be a regular Kree person, but then she gets this magical hammer thing that makes her powerful. And then she happens upon this, she goes searching, she finds this other half of the bracelet that Miss Marvel has, because there's two magical bracelets. And so Miss Marvel has one. Now this, I forget her name, but the villain has the other one. It makes her even more powerful. But I don't get how she knew where to go to get it. I don't know. She seems like an accidental powerful villain. Just accidentally gets all this power and becomes evil. And so I don't get all that. But I will say the movie wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. And I think the action scenes actually done pretty well. I do, and there's this whole thing where when they use their powers, the three are connected for some reason. I forget to explain it, but when either one used their powers, they trade places. I actually thought that was actually very interesting at the beginning when they were fighting on these. They're in three different areas and they're all fighting somebody and they keep trading places and it made the action scene actually really interesting. To me, that was the best scene in the movie was when they're fighting and like they're in like Kamala Khan's house with her family and there's these bad guys in the house that they're fighting and then they trade places with Captain Marvel or somebody. Now they're in the house fighting them and they keep trading places and they're like, where am I? And then now they're in a bad situation that they don't know why these people are attacking me, but we got to deal with it. So I like that aspect of it actually, and even towards the end they did that a little bit, but that was the most interesting part. After that though, the movie was just not that it was boring. It's just I wasn't interested in these characters or the story. So at the end, I was just so ready for the movie to be over. Um, Maybe I'm not. I don't think I hate the movie as much as a lot of people. I don't think I'm going to give as much hate. Still, though, I was just not interested in the movie. I was really kind of bored with it. I was ready for it to be over. Didn't care for the characters or the plot or the villain or anything that happened in the movie, to be honest. And I can't remember. It just ends, and you're like, oh, okay, it's over. There's a whole scene where everybody sings, which is I think people criticize, which is an interesting idea, I guess. And the singing was actually really good. I was like, wow, these people can really sing. I kind of enjoyed some of the singing, but I didn't say I hate that stuff so much. But it was just like, okay, it's just a weird thing to throw in the movie just to try to make it interesting, try to do something to make the movie interesting. And I don't know, nothing really worked. Overall, I can't recommend the movie, The Marvels. I give it 2 stars though. I'm not gonna. It's better than a lot of the. It's better than more than half of the movies that got nominated for Best Picture. I'll tell you that. It was way better than Maestro. I even like. Uh, I'd say it's better than Maestro. It's better than Zone of Interest. Better than American Fiction. Better than Anatomy of the Fall. So it's better than half of the movies at least. So I'll give it that. But still, I can't. Yeah, I'm kind of with a lot of people. It just wasn't a good movie. Anyway, so that's like the newest movie I've seen is The Marvel. So again, hopefully I'll catch on some movies this year and I can give a more updated movie list of what I'm watching next time I do this. But thank you for everybody commenting. Mike, Ryan, Playing Down Under, Nick from Nick Shorts, uh, really, and gave a lot of good comments. Really appreciate the comments. And my sister Abby, always supportive. Really appreciate that. I had Nick at the very beginning from the New York Sports Guy, but he must not have been in there very long. But yeah, thank you for watching this and for commenting. Really appreciate it. And yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed some of my reviews of some movies I've seen recently, and not too many recommendations I can say to check out. Mainly the 2 documentaries were the 2 best things I saw recently. But yeah, I'd love to anybody watching this. Love to hear any comments about anything I've watched. Like I said, there's a bunch of stuff on this one. Hopefully, the next one won't be as much. I won't take too long to do the next what I've been watching, but at least I cleared the palette so I can restart my list of what I've been watching for the next time. So, but thank you for everybody. Hope everybody had a good weekend or is having a good weekend, and I'll see you later.